E.K. Warren was a staunch prohibitionist, and I'm certain that he would have
think
done.
He's spinning in his grave right now?
A lot of people say he is. I tend to try and put a little more of a positive spin on things, and he'd be happy to come back and see that the old factory building's alive and well and actually still standing.
Well, welcome to another edition of the Whiskey Stop. So you actually just got to go to Three Oaks, Michigan.
That's
recently.
right. Three Oaks isn't all that far from South Bend where we are. But it's a nice little travel and a great destination spot for us because, well, it's just not that far away. And the payoff is a terrific restaurant and a terrific distillery.
And we're talking about Journeyman Distillery in Three
right.
Oak there. And they have a lot of different things that you could try. Now, you didn't get to try everything, right?
No, because I wanted to get home in the same day part. I might have had to get a room. I think their product level, I think they're into the teens, actually. The different products they have you can try.
It's actually closer, like in the 20s, I think.
In the
at this
20s?
point, so,
Well, they've
yeah.
expanded since the time before we were there. So
Exactly.
That's pretty cool. And they're all amazing. And the people there are awesome. You feel welcome when you go. And it's just a great and fun place to go.
Very cool. And also, they just recently got some praise from...
Fred Minnick.
Fred Minnick, yeah. So
A lot of people, a lot of viewers know who Fred Minnick is, and he's huge in the whiskey / bourbon world. He really knows his stuff. He's got a magazine, and you'll see him out there all over YouTube, and he writes a lot of great articles. So when Fred Minnick recognizes what you're doing, that means something.
you're doing something right.
You're doing a lot right.
Let's check them out there at Journeyman Distillery.
Here we are today, Three Oaks, Michigan, a beautiful town, and at Journeyman Distillery. We're excited to visit. Let's go. Operating in the historic Featherbone Factory, Journeyman Distillery contains beautiful rental halls, a popular restaurant, a world-class putting green, and of course, a wide variety of spirits. This is Bill Welter, founder of Journeyman Distillery.
I kind of stumbled across Three Oaks with the idea of opening a distillery, and this was back in 2010, and I knew we couldn't have an old whiskey, but we hoped to have an old looking building. And the story kind of starts, I grew up in Valparaiso, Indiana, and initially wanted to open Journeyman in Northwest Indiana. And as we came to find out, the laws in Indiana at the time didn't allow for craft distilling.
Yes.
So fortunately for me, we were just a handful of miles from the Michigan border, and had the opportunity to kind of come across the state line, and we were looking for a home, and stumbled across Three Oaks. I remember the day driving off Route 12 and right on Elm Street, the main street that comes through Three Oaks here, and just immediately fell in love with the town and thought, well, this looks like a great place to have a distillery.
This is a great little town. I love all the shops on the main roads as you go through here too. This building housed. This was like a factory here.
So the old factory building here, a guy named E.K. Warren started his business here in the early 1880s, and he came up with a product that he called the Featherbone. And the Featherbone was a lightweight, flexible product that essentially replaced the whalebone in women's corsets.
Right.
The same material could be used to make buggy whips, and so here we are. We're in E.K. Warren's old factory building. Of course, business went the way of the buggy whip, and here we are today. Almost 140 years later, with Journeyman Distillery. E.K. Warren was a staunch prohibitionist, and I'm certain that he would have
think
done.
He's spinning in his grave right now?
A lot of people say he is. I tend to try and put a little more of a positive spin on things, that he'd be happy to come back and see that the old factory building's alive and well and actually still standing.
Right.
As the story goes, I guess Warren, basically revolutionized this clothing item. I think today the equivalent would be if you or I came up with something that improved the blue jean.
Right.
So everyone was buying them. Everyone was wearing, all the ladies were wearing corsets, and his business was actually an international success across many continents. And in 2009 and 10, when we got started, there wasn't really much of an inkling that craft distilling was going to be some kind of thing. It just kind of played in to my interests and my history, and so no, to answer the question, I don't think we thought we'd be here today, but it's one of those things where we've kind of taken, a little bit of a step every year, and next thing you know, you'll look back and we've taken a lot of steps.
Yeah.
And when you're in the moment, it just seems like you're taking another step forward, but then when you finally look back and see, and we don't look back too often, we're usually forward thinking, what are we going to do next? How can we make things better? But sometimes you take a moment and you look back and you go, yeah, I guess actually we have kind of gone a long distance here.
You guys would have started with, I presume, vodka and gin at the very beginning?
Like most people, we did have gin and vodka early on, and although actually we, about 15, 16 months before we actually opened the doors at Journeyman to the public, I contacted a distillery in Chicago at the time. It was the only distillery in Chicago. It was the first one since Prohibition in Chicago proper, and that was Koval Distillery. And I contacted the owner, Robert. I said, we'd love to have an aged whiskey when we open our doors on day one, but I don't want to. We always want to say that we had our hands in it. We didn't want to go and buy finished whiskey from, Kentucky or MGP in Indiana. Right. So I said, I want to actually make this, but under your supervision. So we made what seemed like a lot at the time was about 400 gallons of whiskey, and let that age. And then when Journeyman opened in October of 2011, we had basically a 14, 15, 16 month old whiskey that we had our hands in, and then we could say all along here that we've always made everything that we've sold.
We notice you've got a barrel-aged gin too. So.
Yeah, we sure do. And just a little background there. I mean, when I got into the business, I had spent nearly 2 years living in Scotland. So right out of college, I moved over to St. Andrews and spent about 18 months living there, and that's where I got into whiskey. So coming back to the U.S. and when we actually got Journeyman up and running, it was focus on whiskey, but the model oftentimes is, well, while you're waiting on the whiskey to age, you need something generating cash flow, and that's where the gin and vodka and the clear spirits come in. But also a big part of the Michigan distilling scene is that you can actually open a restaurant in Michigan with your distillery, which we've done. And for us, it was a big deal to be able to provide all of the different customers with different things that they like. So obviously, as you know, not everyone drinks whiskey, so we needed to provide kind of a wide variety of options for the customers coming into the restaurant, because we couldn't go and just buy someone else's rum or gin or whatever.
I've never understood why everybody doesn't drink whiskey, but that's...
Yeah, no, I'm in that camp too. But so I mean, we make as you mentioned, I think we have 20 different products now. The core lineup is the whiskeys. We make a bourbon. We make a rye whiskey. Actually, we make a few rye whiskeys, and then we make a wheat whiskey, which I think is really wonderful. And then we have a 4-grain whiskey, our Silver Cross. And then you jump into the clears, and we make 2 different vodkas. We make the Red Arrow, which is wheat, and then we did a collaboration with the Field Museum in Chicago, and we made a vodka for them out of heirloom red corn. The Field Museum started with the World's Fair in 1893, and they were looking to celebrate 125 years of the Field Museum. They had done a couple of beer collaborations, and they were looking for the first time in the history of the Field Museum to do something with distilled spirits. So basically they were searching for a company to work with. We threw our hat in the ring and came up with some cool ideas, and I think at the end of the day, they really liked the direction that we were going and the quality of our spirits, and so we were fortunate to get picked to make those products for them.
What's your favorite, or a couple of your favorite?
My favorite's the rye. I mean, that's the first thing we made when we were at Koval. We made 400 gallons of rye, and at the time, rye whiskey wasn't really anywhere near the kind of rebound we're seeing right now.
Yeah, it's big now.
So, you know, I was a fan of bourbon, a fan of Scotch, and but loved the spice and pepper of the rye. So we kind of tried to build the Journeyman brand behind rye. Fred Minnick recently reviewed our Corsets, Whips, and Whiskey, which is 100% wheat, and he named it. He said it was either the first or second best wheat whiskey that he'd ever had ever. So we're
that's high praise from Fred.
Yeah, and we're in the running for Whiskey of the Year on his program with the Corsets.
That's awesome.
So we're pretty excited about that. And it's like I said, you know, I don't think we're in the business for accolades, but you know, it's nice every once in a while to get a pat on the back.
Well, you know you're doing something right, and
Yeah.
Fred recognizes you. I mean, he lives and breathes and drinks whiskey, so he knows his whiskeys and his bourbons.
Yeah, he's fantastic.
Yeah, fantastic. Your restaurant, which I think is marvelous. We've eaten here several times. Buffet's not open right now because of COVID and all,
Yeah.
but you do have the restaurant open. And every time we've ever eaten here and brought people here, it's fantastic.
Yeah, right now we're at 50% capacity, but we are open and operational 7 days a week, and we're, you know, I think we're making the best of the situation, and you know, the restaurant's a great asset for us. It brings people in that maybe wouldn't normally go to a distillery, and then they leave going, you know, hey, I really like that rye I tried, or I like the gin, or whatever it is that they might have had, and we get a lot of tourism in Southwest Michigan, and obviously the hope is that, you know, somebody who's visiting from Indianapolis or Chicago, or even someone further down the road, goes back home and they look for our product in their market. We're back up and running with the tours, and honestly, I can't say enough about our tour guides. The guys are great, and guys and girls, and people really enjoy the tours. And you know, you get to walk through this cool factory building, see the distillation and process. We're distilling 7 days a week, and then you know, the fun, I call it the fun part of the tour, is where you get to taste the product. We're limited to 10 people on the tours. And
call ahead for those, I'm
yeah,
sure.
well, actually, you can sign up online.
Very good.
We're somewhat lucky in the fact that we have a lot of space here, so we're able to social distance, and obviously people have to wear masks on the tour. And actually, our Bilberry Blackheart's gin, which I call it the gateway to gin, because
it's a gateway gin.
Yeah, I've done I've done a lot of tours myself. I have one tonight actually, and you know, probably the number one product that people go, well, I had this in high school, it made me sick, the whole thing, and it's
if you were drinking gin in high school, you were getting sick probably.
Yeah. And you know, so you know, we'll have them try the gin, and you know, it's an American Western style gin, so the juniper is really downplayed, and it's light, it's refreshing, and it's high quality, and so people go, oh, well, if I'd been drinking this, I would have been all right, you know. So it's
the older gins, I think they were pretty forward with the juniper.
Yeah, very.
Not that there's anything wrong with that, but
Yeah,
if you were just starting to enjoy that product, you better
style.
Get into the back off a little bit on that.
Yeah. And when Journeyman opened, when we first got our DSP in 2010, we were one of less than 250 distilleries that were operating in the United States at the time.
What's your DSP number?
15027, but
you knew that right off the top of your head.
I almost forgot there for a second, but at that moment, we were one of 250 distilleries that were open and operational in 2010.
That's pretty neat.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, now I hear about a putting green I haven't been to before. I know golfers like to putt.
Hopefully
drink
not too
whiskey
much.
and yeah, right, yeah. Oh, not too much, but tell us a little bit about that.
I spent some time in Scotland. I actually went to Missouri State University and played golf there for 4 years as a Division One golf program. And after finishing my career there, I thought, I want to learn more about the history of the game. And so that's when I moved to St. Andrews and spent my time there. I went over there to learn more about the history of the game, but actually, fell in love with whiskey. And there's a putting green in St. Andrews called the Himalayas. And it's basically a public putting course where families and kids and different people go and use it. Well, once Journeyman kind of got up and going, I have a very good friend of mine who I played high school golf with, and his name is Craig Haltom, and Craig has had a lot of success in golf course architecture and development. And so I think it was over a couple of Last Feather Rise, I was able to kind of strong arm him into building basically a replica of the Himalayan putting green from St. Andrews. So it's 30,000 square feet. It's all natural, real grass. It's an 18-hole putting course. It's free for kids 12 and under because we want to get kids involved in playing the game.
Sure.
And, it's nice for parents to have the kids be able to run around on the green, and at the same time, isn't it nice, for the kids to do something other than looking at their iPad or
Sure.
iPhone or whatever, and get them outside. And I think that's more important than ever right now with everything that's going on. So we've had a lot of kids out this summer, parents putting, and it's just kind of a blast. And we've always kind of looked at ourselves as kind of an experience. And the putting green is just another added experience to the Journeyman visit. Yeah, we believe quite firmly that it's the largest putting green in the world, not directly affiliated with a golf course.
Right.
I mean, we've got some wonderful wedding event spaces here, as well as a lot of the corporate, do some corporate events, holiday parties, things like that. Our events people here are really exceptional. We actually won best wedding venue in Michigan 2 of the last 3 years through the Knot, which is a big wedding platform. The old factory building really tells its own story outside of the distillery. And what's great about it for events is that a lot of times if you get married, you rent a wedding hall or something like that, you never go back. You can relive the experience here 7 days a week if you want. You
How
can
cool
come
is
back
that?
every day and say, I was married here. And, we have a ton of our brides and grooms that come back and visit every year and say, hey, this is great because I can come back and revisit a special day. So jumping in here, we've got our Corsets, Whips, and Whiskey, and this is our cast strength offering of 100% wheat. When it comes out of barrel, whatever the proof out of barrel is,
Right.
that's what we'll bottle it at, so we don't add any water post maturation. I love the label here. It tells the story of the factory we're in. So this is an old corset and buggy whip factory, and of course we're bringing the essential ingredient to the mix here, corsets, whips, and now we make whiskey here. And this is one of my favorite products. It tells the story of the distillery, but also this 100% wheat just has a really nice, smooth, buttery note to it. A lot of complexity, and really feel like this is a great wheat.
Ooh, yeah.
So this is
That opens up nicely on the palate, doesn't it?
this particular batch is 116.4 proof.
Okay, which you'll always find barrel proof. It's marked on the bottle.
Yep.
And unless it's coming out of the same barrel, it's
Yeah.
never going to be.
And each one of our bottles,
The same.
we actually hand number. So this is batch
Okay.
23. We have a whole team of bottlers who do all the labels by hand. They're applied by hand. Each bottle is dipped into wax. So that's kind of our signature there. And then every label is hand numbered. This is the fun part of your job, huh?
This is a great job right now. This is an awesome job.
We have a product that we call Election Day. It's 100% rye. We put it in barrel every election day, or on election day for the U.S. presidency, and then 4 years later we bring it out. So we've got about 50 barrels of that laying down, and around September 1, we're going to taste through those and get it ready for the release. So
Wouldn't that be neat?
that's going to be fun.
That's a good idea.
Yeah.
That's a good idea.
So this product is our Featherbone Bourbon. Of course, it's named after the fact that we're in this corset and buggy whip factory that was called the Featherbone Factory. So we took the name there. On the front there, that's actually the pump house. So the water in Three Oaks comes out of an aquifer. It's a great natural source of water to make whiskey. So, oftentimes people talk about bourbon and water being such an important factor, so we just put the pump house right on the front. Like all of our whiskeys here, the products are USDA certified organic and kosher. So we feel like we're using the best resources to make our whiskey. The bourbon, of course, as you guys know, and I'm sure most of your listeners, it's an American product. You can make it in Michigan or any state in the union. Has to be at least 51% or more corn. Must be distilled under 160 proof, aged in new American white oak barrels that are charred, and there's a few other small stipulations, but we're meeting the requirements, and so we call this our Featherbone Bourbon.
Okay. What's the rest of your mash bill in that?
It's 70% white corn that we get out of Illinois, actually, and then 25% wheat and just a dash of rye in there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Totally different than the other one,
drinks
which is
soft
nice.
compared
And
to
it
the
does,
corsets,
doesn't it?
doesn't it?
It
Yeah.
does.
I never thought 90 proof would taste watered down, but this is at 90 proof. Very soft. It's got that natural sweetness from a bourbon, and,
Which I like.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that.
Well, the American palate's very, very sweet forward, and I think that's why people really love bourbon. It's got that sugary component. One of my favorite products is our Last Feather Rye. 60% rye, 40% wheat.
Okay.
So the rye typically has some spice, some pepper. Normally rye can kind of punch in the nose a little bit. Pretty robust and spicy. We actually wanted to create something that was a little softer and more approachable. So the mash bill here of the 60% rye, you're still getting that nice peppery and spice note, but the wheat being 40% and a big part of this whiskey brings that sweetness, softness, some buttery notes, and really kind of balances out that spice and pepper of the rye.
So if somebody thought they didn't like a rye that
That's
they
right.
had before, this would be a good one to try.
We think this should be in everyone's cabinet,
yeah.
just because it's a unique rye. You're just, most of the ryes on the market are 95, 100% rye.
Yeah, I'm getting the rye,
Yeah,
and I love rye.
get a little bit of mint
Yeah.
there, actually. A little subtle spearmint note or a little bit of mint.
You do. I'm glad you mentioned that.
Yeah.
Yeah. It takes a second, and then that kind of pops there.
So you guys can see this is not overly robust. It still has that kind of lingering spice on your palate.
But you definitely pick up the rye
Yeah.
first thing, but it doesn't knock you off your feet. Not
So-
that there's anything wrong with
No.
that either, because
No,
some
yeah,
people
there's-
like a more forward rye, but this is
There's a place for it for sure.
Mhm.
So this is the field rye. You can see pouring it into the glass here that it's got a really nice, beautiful hue to it. And where that comes from is this rye whiskey is the Last Feather Rye. The only difference is we macerate Black Michigan figs into this rye whiskey.
Really?
So I kind of call this like an old fashioned in a bottle almost, because there is that sugary component that stands up well with the rye. You're getting a little more sweetness, and this is great just right out of the bottle. It's like a cocktail in itself, even though it is a flavored rye whiskey.
as a man who distills and does all of this, you usually like to drink neat.
I do.
I've come that way through the
Yeah.
years too.
I just feel like it's a better reflection of the whiskey.
You really know what you got there, wouldn't you?
Honestly, when you go to bars and stuff, a lot of times, the ice may not be that great.
Right.
The water may not be that great. And so you're just...
And that is a big
ruining
component
whiskey.
once you
Yeah.
put it in a good whiskey. Yeah, now I can tell the difference in
Yeah.
this.
my palate's a little drier, so while on occasion I like the sweetness of the field rye.
But you'd like it more in the background.
Yeah, I like my whiskeys a little bit cleaner and drier.
If we all like the same thing, you'd only have one out there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Although I think this one, from a consumer standpoint, people tend to like the sweetness of that.
And that's really
flavor.
different. I've never had a rye like that.
Yeah, it's
before.
fun.
Yeah. That's good. Excellent.
So that was a really cool conversation you had with Bill Welter over there
Yeah.
at Journeyman. Neat place, that Featherbone factory that they repurposed. Very, very cool. And
All of that, and I had not really seen the golf course before.
yeah,
There.
the putting green out there. Wow.
That is a putting green and a half. My gosh, that's just awesome.
It's pretty cool.
Everything you'll see in the video was just spectacular. And Bill was a great guy to talk to.
Yeah.
Which
Great.
I think was very noticeable, but he's just so enthusiastic about what they do, what they've done, the history of the place. It was just a fun place to go. And again, the food there, if you go there to eat as well, I'd do the whole thing if I were you, is absolutely fantastic.
It's good stuff. And you couldn't try everything while you were there. Obviously,
Right.
Again, you wanted to get home
Yeah.
safe and soundly.
Right.
One of the things you did not get to try, so we thought we would try today, is
Right.
the Silver Cross whiskey. Now, that is actually, in fitting with their putting green there too, is actually named after an award that was given in the very, very early days of the British Open golf tournament, which is kind of cool. So this particular whiskey is a 4-grain, equal parts corn, rye, wheat, and malted barley there. And so thought maybe we could give that one a try. Got a couple of glasses.
I think we should always have the tasting glasses at hand. So anyway, excited to try this. Yeah, this is one I have not tried before. So we'll pour. I'm going to let you pour this time. I'm always the guy that pours.
Well, you do it well, so.
Well, I've had practice. I'm older than you. I do like the color. Anything you pour, the first thing you kind of always want to do is just look at the color. Always amazed. It's a clear spirit goes into a barrel and comes out with this.
It's really cool.
With a color. And depending on the mash bill and everything else, and the yeast strain, what comes out of the barrel after a number of years is always a treat.
It's very interesting nose too. It's definitely has some kind of oakiness and leather, but I get some fruit with it too.
Not a tart fruit, something a little more a mellow sort of fruit is what I'm getting out of it. More like maybe an apricot, something more along those lines. Not as citrusy.
It's going to have some of that kind of dried fruit taste on the palate too, and I do think some of that apricot comes out on the palate.
The finish is nice. The finish goes for a while. Which I like. I really like. Here's the reason I kind of really like this. This is a lot different than a lot of other whiskeys I've had.
Yeah.
And very pleasant, and it's very distinct. If you put this with 3, 4, or 5 other whiskeys, I think I could tell them apart pretty easily.
It's almost a long but smooth finish, and almost kind of a creamy, buttery texture to that.
There's not a bite to it. If you're looking for a bite, if you're looking for a pour that's got a big bite to it, this will not be. This is more on the smooth, a little more restrained side.
Yeah.
So depending on the mood, when you do a pour at the end of the day or the middle of the day, or not the first thing in the morning though.
Late morning.
Late morning. Yeah, late morning. 10, 9:45, or whenever late morning is for you. I do like this.
Yeah, that's
this is
good
excellent. Journeyman. You should really visit there if you can. If you're in the area traveling or whatever, 3 Oaks, Michigan, highly recommend it. Great people over there. The staff's terrific, and they make you feel at home. And if you get a chance to tour the place, I highly recommend that. And do a tasting with some of their product. And I don't see anything about any of it you wouldn't enjoy.
Very true, very true. And if you can't make it there, you can find some Journeyman on the shelf there and take it home. So we want to thank you for joining us. Check out some of our other videos, some of our other distillery visits, even our movie reviews that are out there. And until next time, cheers.
Cheers.